Hi, it's me, Corey, of Venus and Mars Canine. Hello to my three fans who care about what's going on with my life. So, if you haven't heard, I just moved to a new apartment and I wanted to vlog about the move a little bit, but then I was thinking, and I have kind of been thinking about this for a few weeks. Cupid is 6.5 years old and he has a life story. We have gone through many situations. And, for the longest time, my followers on social media were like there from the beginning and they kind of all saw it all happen in real time. But now I'm like, oh, I bet there's people following me who have no idea, like, why do I have a 6-year-old KMPV Dutch herder in Chicago and he mostly just like sits around and looks cute all day. So I wanted to tell that story and kind of just like reflect back on our lives a little bit. And then we'll talk about moving. I'm going to make this a two-parter. So part one is going to be the story of Cupid and Mars too. And then part two is going to be the actual move vlog, as well as my like training outline for some things that I'm working on with Cupid for the new apartment. Here he is, the star of the show. Buddy, here's the thing. I am not going to edit this, so you're going to have to figure out what to do. And this is how I'm doing the vlog now. I just want to say, like, obviously, I've said this before, but it just is this important. My dogs have been so important to me. My personal dogs have been so important to me as a trainer. I am always thinking about, his face looks so funny. I'm always thinking about my own lived experiences with my own dogs when I'm working with other people. Not that it's always the same situation, not that I'm giving people advice of what I would do necessarily, obviously, because I'm a professional trainer, so I'm going to handle a situation differently than I expect my clients to a lot of times, and they're very specific dogs, so I'm not saying like I'm treating every client dog that I come across like Mars and Cupid, but I'm always just kind of bouncing off of my own experience and reflecting back and seeing how that compares, and it just is extremely valuable. So yeah, like, if you work with a trainer who only has like one papillon or something, just think about that in terms of their expertise. Not to turn this into a shit talking thing. So yeah, let's get into it. Are you gonna be really annoying while I'm doing this? I haven't done anything with him today, and I just gave him a scatter of kibble, so he thinks maybe there's like a part two to his enrichment. What if you laid on the floor and left me alone? What if? Alright, so I'm going to tell you how I got Cupid, but first I have to tell you how I got Mars. So I was working at a dog daycare kind of completely by random, is where we'll start the story. I was 19 years old. It was like a 60 dog max daycare in the inner city, and they had a training team too, which is how I got exposed to training, and I fell in love with it. All of the trainers there, I can just say too, this is Call of the Wild. They just closed, so there's no consequence to me saying that, I think, and I'm not going to say anything bad about them. But all of the trainers there, or most of them, had border collies, and several of the trainers had several border collies too. So like the owner of the facility, I think at one point when I was there, she had like 10 border collies, but maybe I'm exaggerating that in my head. And then the head trainer, Jasmine, had two, and another trainer had two, and so there were just a boatload of border collies up in there all the time. And I kind of got in my head, like, professional trainers have border collies, but I also have an I'm different complex, if you can't tell, right? And so, yes, I worked at Urban Outfitters for a year before this job, and so I wanted a herding breed. I think basically just because I thought that was like the right thing to do if you want to get into professional training. But I didn't want a border collie because I didn't want to be like everybody else. And additionally, I had met a couple of blue heelers, Australian cattle dogs, when I was taking horseback riding lessons as a child, and so I really liked those dogs, or they seemed nice. I liked how completely stuck to their owners they were. Like, they really didn't care that much about other people. They were just like very loyal to the horse people that were walking around the barn, and they would always just follow behind them. And I was like, you know what? Those look like cool dogs, and I want one. And so I started following the Australian Cattle Dog Rescue of Illinois, and I went. I took off work one day, and they kind of got more busy, and they needed me, and I was like, no, today's the day. I have to go to the rescue right now. And I was going to go to Tinley Park, which is, do I know how far Tinley Park is? I think it's like 45 minutes from the city. And they had like an adoption day at this PetSmart in Tinley Park, but that got canceled, and they were like, sorry, we're not coming to Tinley Park anymore. And I was like, oh my god, I already kind of like stressed off or pissed off my manager by saying I can't come in, and I was like, no, today's the day, I'm gonna get this dog. So I took my smart car and I drove by myself to southern Illinois, and I think that's 4 hours. I think I drove 8 hours in one day, 4 hours out. And I went to their farm where they had all of the dogs. Let's see how far Shawnee National Forest is. Yeah, that says it's 5 hours from here, so that's probably true. So yeah, I did 8 hours in one day, which was something I did not have a lot of experience with at that time. Now I've done a lot of road trips and I've driven far by myself, but at that time, that was probably the furthest I'd ever driven because I was 19. And I went and I saw there were 2 cow dogs that I was checking out that I'd seen online, and I took them out and I practiced like walking them around and just watching how they interacted with the environment. And then I would make little kissy noises and sing the puppy song, and I was checking to see which dog was more responsive to my voice, and it was Mars, whose original name was Phoebe, and this other cattle dog named Silver. And Silver was kind of like a red and blue heeler combined, and she was really cool looking, and I was kind of more interested in her than Mars because she just looked really cool. But she was less responsive to me, and she was more independent, and I was like, I need a dog that's more responsive to me because I want to do training with this dog. I wanted to get this dog to show that I could do professional training, and just have my own dog, so I was interested in training. And so I was hanging out with the dogs, and there was this other family there also visiting, and I remember this random man was like, you should get Phoebe, Mars, because she was just so sweet, and she was there, she's like 9 months old at the time, she was licking all of us a bunch, and I was like, it's kind of annoying that she wants to lick so much, but yeah, I can see this is like the better dog. And the funny thing is, like, to this day, she loves licking, and it's gross. So I clocked that as annoying, and it continued to be representative of her behavior. And yeah, the rest is history with Mars. Venus and Mars Canine, she's the GOAT. She was a great, like, the perfect first dog for me. She was an insane resource guarder. She's like 35 pounds, so how serious can that really be? But she taught me so much about behavior, and also was just a great dog to get into training with because she's just a really good dog for training. So maybe gave me a little bit of an ego really quickly, but I was able to teach, a lot of skills and learn about how a lot of skills were worked and like the steps to teach them. All right, and while I was at Call of the Wild, I met my first Malinois. This was before John Wick and not before Instagram, but before Reels for sure. And there weren't that many Mals around. I only ever met one the whole time I was at that daycare. And honestly, yeah, all of the kennels that I worked at around that time, like you just didn't see Malinois at like a regular dog daycare. And she was really giving the training team a run for their money, and the owner ended up taking the dog to a different trainer that I think was more of a working dog trainer. I don't even know who it was, so I don't know if that was a good option or not, but yeah, she was really difficult, and basically everyone knew that we were going to have to kick her out as soon as she came in because she was just too high energy, too high drive, and we, had dogs in play groups, and it was just too busy in there for her. And the daycare staff would, at one point, walk her outside because all of the pottying happened outside, so they were leashed to go out there, walked her out on a chain and a muzzle at the same time so she couldn't bite the leash and start playing with it. So it was like the muzzle was there to keep the leash out of her mouth, and if somehow that didn't work, the chain was there for backup so that she didn't have anything to clamp onto. Though they could bite a chain if they really wanted to. And I have a picture of me just like holding her in my arms like a baby. I loved her so much. She was, yeah, I don't know. I just fell in love with this little problem child. And I started looking at videos of Malinois online. At that time, I was also doing a lot of just like watching training videos online. I was watching Michael Ellis videos. I was watching anything I could find online for free because I was also making like $11 an hour, and yeah, like I couldn't be buying a bunch of stuff. And this was before the big boom of online content, so I was really like, there was this vibe of I was like digging around for training videos, and I was learning more about training, from the places that I was working, but also I was really into watching online content, which I am pretty flipping burnt out of now, which is unfortunate because there's so much more online. But yeah, like there was like a good year where I was just a fiend for any training video. I was absorbing all of that information like a computer. And I remember I would just like watch videos of Mal's doing search and rescue, and I remember like seeing videos of them like getting dropped, not dropped down from a helicopter, belayed down or whatever you would call it, and I would just like cry. I would just be like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe that dogs can do this and that they can work with, that we can work with them and be a team. And that's how I got interested in it and how I started following working dogs. I randomly found Logan Haas through some girl that I was following on Instagram, and I went to their scent work seminar. I audited in the fall, and then they did the same seminar again in the spring, and I went back with a working spot with Mars, which was funny because it was like filled with Mals and police dogs and these like hardcore rescue dogs, and I just came in with my, or hardcore search and rescue dogs rather. And I came in with my little dog, and I'm also little, and there's like cops all around me, and I'm just like, sit, lie down, and she lies down, and the cops are like, whoa, your dog lays down when you ask without you cracking on their chain several times. They're like, how did you do that? And I was like, I'm a dog trainer. And so that's how I met Mike Suttle at Logan Haas Kennels. And then shortly after that, they posted about an internship, a working dog internship, and I had also decided to move from Chicago to Portland, so I went and lived with them in West Virginia for 2.5 months in between living in Chicago and living in Portland. I just like stopped there, did that working dog internship, and learned even more. And I was in this spot where I really couldn't decide for dog two, not dog three, dog two, if I wanted another cattle dog because I loved Mars, or if I wanted a Mal because I'd fallen in love with these Malinois, or if I wanted a pit bull because I just like pit bulls. And foreshadowing, that's the exact same situation I am in now, thinking about getting dog three. But like every single day, I'd wake up, and I'd wake up one day and I'd be like, I want a cattle dog. And then I'd wake up the other day and I'd be like, I want a Malinois. And I just would cycle through those. And then I don't even remember exactly exactly how it went down, but basically after living at Logan Haas, I just felt like I trusted Mike a little bit more, because finding these dogs, finding these breeders or rescues and being able to trust them is like really stressful for me. Like I and yeah, like I just was like picking the breed that you want is one thing, and then figuring out how to get a good healthy dog from that breeder is like a whole other thing. And so just like living in Mike Suttle's house with him, I was like, okay, I just like want to go with this guy that I trust, so I'm gonna get one of these dogs. And I was interested in bite work and stuff, obviously, so that made sense to do too. I was not really exposed to the idea of a balanced high drive sport dog, because this internship was a lot about police and military dogs and these like KNPV lines. It was just more like badass, like hardcore working dogs. My dog's just a working dog, they're not a pet. And I didn't really have like a mentor specifically at that time. I was bouncing around the country, and I just I got this dog and I was like, this dog's gonna be a machine. This dog's gonna be a monster. And I didn't really have anyone telling me otherwise at the time. And so that was kind of like the perspective that I started out owning Cupid with. Is I was like, I didn't think he was going to be able to go out with Mars necessarily, or I didn't want to count on it, because I was like, this dog's just, he's going to be a crazy machine, and he's going to be for bite work, and I'm going to take him out for training, and then he's going to go back in the crate. And that was just like the culture that I had seen. And so that was like when I got him as a puppy, that was my mindset starting out, where I was like, this dog's a machine. And then like he would like play with my ex's doodle, and I was like, oh, okay, this is also nice too. And then it was like slowly over the course of 2 years, I like he does just have such a good temperament that I that kind of like self-corrected without anyone having to like have a talk with me. But I do think sometimes about the fact that if I had like a real mentor that I had consistent contact with, they would have been like, hey, you can like focus on life skills with your 6 month old Dutch herder. But yeah, I just like wasn't thinking about that at the time. You live and you learn. um, and when I brought him home, it was, I brought him home in February of 2020, which means that the very next month was lockdown, quarantine. And so, you know, anytime he is not social, I can go, oh, he's a COVID puppy. Just kidding. I'm actually very self-conscious about bringing that up, because so many clients are like, oh, my dog's a COVID puppy. And like, I don't know. It is a legit excuse, but I guess I just feel self-conscious about having any excuse. But yeah, I was very scared at the beginning of COVID, and I took quarantine really seriously, and like we were not seeing people the way that his the beginning of his life looked completely different than it would have been without COVID. Um, and then I moved back to Chicago. And then that year during COVID was a blur, and I moved back to Chicago, and I wasn't sure what sport I wanted to do with him. I knew I just wanted to do bite work, but I didn't have any specific connections, so I knew that our bite work career was going to be dictated by, you know, who I could connect with, basically. I ended up settling on IGP, formerly known as Schutzen, because it's kind of the most popular, just like by sheer numbers. And so I was like, this will be good because I'll have more options for who I can go to in terms of clubs and stuff. But it is a little silly too that I had like a 10-month-old Dutchie, and I came to Chicago and I was like, I'm kind of interested in PSA, and I'm also kind of interested in IGP. For the dog folks, you know, that's not like a normal, it's not a normal thing to be thinking about. Like those sports are really different. And yeah, it's kind of silly that I was there. But yeah, I ended up finding an IGP club, and I still didn't have like a specific mentor, but I had some good helpers. God bless you. Wow, we are sneezing. I had some good helpers, like decoys, that were giving me on advice on things, and yeah, Cupid at that time was extremely intense. I mean, basically like the first 3 years of his life, like he was a lot of dog. He had his sweet moments. He was, I had him out in the house, but like he was just scary. Like not scary for me to handle, but like he had a level of intensity that was like 12 out of 10. Like when that's what I wanted, that's what I signed up for. But like at that time, I thought that that's how he was going to be forever, and I had signed up for it. But looking back now, how he's matured, I'm just like, wow, like I'm proud of myself for not for handling that dog, I guess is what I'm saying, because he was a lot of dog. And again, I didn't have a mentor, so I only kind of knew what I was doing. I exercised him a lot to help balance that, obviously, including a lot of fetch, which is a little bit foreshadowing, unfortunately, of what came right after that. And I was following Fenzi Dog Sports Academy, Bitey. There's like an FDSA Bitey Facebook group that had a lot of, not a lot, it's a very small group compared to all of the rest of their groups, but it had people sharing training techniques, and I would look at those videos and make a plan with my helpers for how I wanted to train things. And this is something that I'm extremely proud of, because I had people, when I first got Cupid, I had a couple of men be like, this dog's gonna grow up and bite you while you're doing bite work, right? Like, he's gonna grow up and he's gonna nail you in these sessions because he's so powerful and he's so intense. And people were telling me that when he was a puppy. But then at the same time, they were telling me that when I was like, how should I say this? I didn't know every progression of every training skill when I first got him as a puppy. In the beginning, when you're doing bite work with a green dog or a puppy, it is really normal that you don't have them drop the toy like of their own free will, and you choke them off of the bite. And the like positive version of that is you show them like a second toy or something. Basically, like the dog is not dropping it. And so I was down, to do that. That was what I had been exposed to at Logan Haas too. But right away I was like, okay, so what's my game plan here? Because obviously I'm going to be asking him to out, and I don't see how these two things connect right now. At first I'm strangling him off of the tug, and then eventually I'm going to be asking him to out and he's going to drop it. We were doing like 2-toy fetch and stuff, but I just didn't understand the progression of that in a bite work context. And I was told by some people at the time, they were like, well, yeah, don't worry about it. Like, we're just going to slap an e-collar on him and blast him. And then those same people were telling me, like, you better get ready because this dog's going to grow up and bite you one day. And I was like, okay, like, this is my first bite work dog, and I'm not an expert here, but I feel like these two things are related, that you're telling me that I should just teach him an out by blasting him, and you're also telling me that he's going to bite me. So was a flagged to me in my own brain right away, and it was really important to me to figure out like what that progression was really going to look like. And because of how much I wasn't surrounded by people that were of the same mindset, like it seems online, if I had been in this situation and it was like 5 years in the future, I know all of these resources now, and like I don't really have a sense for if this is like no longer the dominant ideology, or I mean, I could say definitively that this is not the trendy, training culture anymore to plan on just blasting your dog into outing. But I do feel like I kind of like carved that path for myself by myself a little bit, just because I didn't know anyone that could help me. And so I ended up really following these positive only bite work schools of thought, and then just using what I already knew about pressure and release from pet training to make that training plan. And so like I am proud to say that this dog never bit me during those situations. But it was also interesting because I really used a lot Like I was very, very, very heavily inspired by the force-free bite work training techniques. I loved how extremely specific and broken down they were, but I was also not like accepted by those people. And there were some times where there was that Facebook group that had like monthly training challenges or whatever, and I was explicitly told that I could not participate in them because I did use tools with my dog. So that is an interesting political thing that was happening that I will never forget for the rest of my life, that you guys did that to me. And yeah, so that's a little bit about our training, and like, yeah, what we were up to. I do want to shout out the helpers that I had at that time: Dennis and at Rose City, and then Rolando at OG. I always forget if it's Edgerton or Edgerton, even though I literally was in that club for a year and I trialed in it. But Rolando in Wonder Lake, they were very good about me coming into those sports and just like asking a million billion questions, and they helped me, make my own training plan. I hope Cupid isn't being too noisy right now. He's like rolling around under the table asking me to pet him. So yeah, like around a year and a half, Cupid started to show some lameness. And he was limping on his front end. And basically, we began this process of diagnostics, rehab, rest, slowly building up back to work, going back to work fully, immediately lame again, diagnostics, rest, rehab, etc., etc. That was a cycle that we went to several times over the course of like a year. Please don't anyone post any or like tell me any advice or anything. I have already done all of it, I promise. Don't ask me anything about it. But we went to the orthopedic specialist in Chicago. We went to the sports medicine specialist in Chicago. We did rehab. I drove him out of state to Ohio to get a third opinion from a different ortho and sports medicine team. He's had x-rays, MRIs, ultrasounds, CAT scans. We did massage, PT, chiropractics, underwater treadmill, dry needling, red light therapy. I took a year-long fitness class through Fenzi Dog Sports Academy, and I also was following some courses and hired Anna Lee Sanders from Canine Conditioning Coach to help us with the PT exercises. We did a lot. I tried really hard to fix this problem. He is broken. It did not work. None of it worked at all, basically. And it was extremely stressful for me because every time I started, well, like obviously it was extremely stressful for me, but it was also really anxiety inducing. Every time I would try to introduce exercise or work again, if he started to show lameness, I had in my head what our original timeline was for trialing him. Like, you have a young dog and you are planning on doing your debut, and you have in your head, like, we're going to do this level at this age, we're probably going to get to this level at that age, whatever. And so anytime he started to be lame, I was juggling, like, okay, we're going to be set back this much, we have to pause on training. And I really wanted to trial him because I was really proud of the work that we had got done together. I was proud of the training that we had done, and it felt really cool, like, because of what I said earlier. I feel like I did a lot by myself, and I wanted to show what I had accomplished. And the training that we were doing in club, I was really proud of it, and I did really want to trial him. And so obviously, like, this part of the story is really tragic, but also know, like, it was the cycling of rest and stuff, and not being sure if I was going to wash him or not. Like, that was a specific kind of anxiety. And so when I decided to wash him, like it was sad, but also at that point, because we'd done that cycle so many times, it was a little bit relieving to be like, okay, like you're just not going to be better to the point where you can do bite work or compete, and that's just the end of this story. He did begin to develop some behavior issues surrounding the crate from all of the rest. This rest was happening when he was like in his peak insanity phase of life, hormonally, and we were, using sedative drugs and stuff too, but he just started to get really bad about the crate because he was freaking stuck in there all the time. And I was working at a kennel, like I had a full-time job, so if I had been unemployed, I could have probably done more to, you know, keep him on leash and do long, slow walks or something. We did what we could, but I also had to work 40 hours a week and commute, over an hour a day. So that's at least 8 hours of crate time at work. And yeah, so that sucked. He was washed officially at about age 2, and it became clear also that it was bite work sessions specifically that were the worst physical trigger for him. So we would get to a spot where he was looking pretty good, moving around, able to run freely and stuff, and then the very first bite work session we went back to, he would be limping again. That was including off leash. A lot of times with younger dogs, it's normal to like have them kind of tethered for bite work or with the handler holding the leash. And so I was like, we tried different harnesses. We tried just having them on the collar. All of those things would still trigger the pain. And so we got to the point where his training was good enough where I started working him off leash around the helper. And I was like, okay, we just can't restrain him. Like it's the restraint that's causing the problems. And it's not, well, I mean, the restraint did definitely make it worse, but we worked him off leash a couple of times, and it was just that he was so freaking excited to be doing the bite work that even if he just ran 30 feet to a blind to bark at the helper, just the way that he stepped for those 30 feet, he would mess his shoulder up because he would just be too excited and he wasn't being careful about moving his body. So that's why that was like what led me to wash him officially. It was the bite work sessions that were hurting him so much. And he ended up being diagnosed by process of elimination with a pinched nerve in his shoulder. I didn't say that earlier. And he also began to have severe compensatory tightness on his rear diagonal leg, because he's basically just like clenching all of his muscles a lot when he moved. Like he was really like just so tight from trying to like be tight to avoid pinching that nerve. And so it was like the problem was the nerve, but then also his posture all of that time would kind of cause compensatory lameness too. And again, we were doing so much rehab. Healthy Paws paid me a lot of money. I would not have been able to do all of that if we didn't have Healthy Paws as insurance. And yeah, we used the fuck out of that insurance. We did so much stuff. So anyhow, then he got washed. Sport career over. He has his novice obedience title, but besides that, his sport career was over. I found, after that, it's obviously the question is like, how the hell do I keep this dog happy and give him enough enrichment and exercise? And training tricks and advanced obedience in combination with some, physical exercise and movement has always been his best form of enrichment, which has directly inspired the way that I have group classes in the city for dogs who have limited exercise options just because of the logistics of like their apartment and their neighborhood and no backyard and all of that stuff. So, sorry, I had to drink my nasty green smoothie for a second. And in those trick training sessions, that's also how I became interested in doggy dance, was just working on combination of tricks basically. And I mean, when I worked at C Spot Run on my lunch break, I found it really helpful. Like, you hit a point sometimes where you're like, there's nothing that I want to do with this dog during my 45-minute lunch break. Like, what do I train today? I don't know. And just doing toy stuff, like, it's good, it's something, but it was really incredible how much doing thoughtful, like, cue discretion and new trick training and stuff, it would be clearly so much more satisfying and enriching for him. And so I would, like, pick three tricks and, like, spend that time being like, how can I make a cute dance with these three tricks and really, like, flow them together. And that was an awesome prompt for me to keep me engaged, and it was good enrichment for him too. And if I'm not challenging him and really pushing him, and I'm, like, paying attention, we have that connection. And I don't know if really saying flow makes sense, because I feel like flow implies, like, a certain, like not, yeah, you're paying attention. I don't know. You know what? Never mind. I don't know what flow means. I'm gonna take back that I said anything about flow. But if I'm not, like, engaged with him, I can just tell, like, he's not using his brain as much. I'm not, engaging with him, and it's just not the same level of satisfaction at the end of that session. And so, yeah, that's kind of like what I ended up focusing on with him, and that's what I feel has kept my training sharp, even though I haven't gotten a new puppy anytime recently. It's that, like, I'm not going to say that these days I'm doing that every single day, but I worked at C Spot Run for 3 years, and that was our lunch break protocol every single day. And, we did stuff at home too, and that's just, like, that's his jam. That's his best form of enrichment now. I still let him do exercise that will lead to pain and limping. Like, it's not like I have him live his life completely avoiding pain, because that would be torture for him if he couldn't run or play with toys. But it's still, as soon as I washed him from bite work, everything became a lot easier, and his body became a lot happier too. So he'll have flare-ups, he'll limp, he'll look stiff, and I'm not, like, completely preventing that all the time, but it's just not as big of a deal now that we're not doing the bite work training. And yeah, like, he can do stuff. There's certain things, like, I don't do live fetch, meaning I don't let him pick up a ball that's bouncing. If I throw the toy and let him get it, I'll only do that a few times, because it's the bending down and picking something off the ground that is hard on his body, or that's one of the triggers that's hard on his body. And we do a lot of running around trees, if you haven't seen on our Instagram, because that is a cued running. I can, keep him running, keep his cardio up, and he's not having to get a toy that whole time. Like, he's just going around the trees. And so we're big tree runners these days for his exercise. And luckily he can still tug. It's kind of a weird thing juxtaposed with the bite work situation, but that's kind of also how I know that bite work was about him just, like, stepping weird and moving stupid, because we can tug with him, and that's actually one of his safest activities that is least likely to cause lameness. Just regular old tugging. Inside, on a rug or out in the backyard or whatever, not running around in between, just straight up tugging, and he loves it. However, I developed a neck problem, quite similar in location, I would imagine, to where my dog feels pain, and so I can't tug with him that hard anymore, which is ridiculous. Like, huge freaking fail life moment, like, because it's his safest activity, and I really had to stop tugging aggressively with him. I started having neck pain that's, like, kind of its own long story with specific, details and events, but basically I couldn't figure out exactly what was triggering the pain for me, and it took me a really long time to realize tugging with Cupid was a big trigger, because I was doing it so often, and because it didn't hurt. It doesn't hurt when I'm actually tugging with him, it hurts afterwards. And yeah, it's like it took me a really long time to figure out that was happening, and when I did, I was like, this is, like, unreal levels of irony. But my partner will tug with him, luckily, and I'll still do a tiny bit sometimes. So yeah, that's the story with that. Yeah, and that's the story of Cupid. It's kind of sad for a big chunk of it, but nowadays, like, he is a pet. He hangs out with Mars all the time. We go for walks. He runs around a little bit. We do a little toy play, a little bit of training, and he, you know, mm, I think a lot about the fact that no one else would do well with this dog except me. Like, he's kind of too excited to be a pet. He's difficult to enrich because of his exercise restraints, and he can't be a sport dog, or he can't do the majority of sports, again, because of his exercise constraints. So he is an extremely specific kind of dog, and I love him, and he sleeps in bed with me every night, and my whole life is structured around him. Every vacation I've ever had has been structured around him, and yeah, that's Cupid. Okay, and we just moved. Stop looking out the window. Hey, hey. We just moved to a new apartment, and I'm going to talk about that in part 2.